What's going on, everybody? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I'm going to try to keep this video as short as possible, simply because there's really so little to say about it. I mean, it's the same 2 or 3 points just dragged up over and over and over again. So, anyway, let's look at Bungie. You know Bungie, the company that used to make quality games. Now, it unfortunately ended after they made Halo Reach, and then they haven't made a good game since. In fact, they've made several flops. They've made one of the worst games I've ever played, possibly the worst first-person shooter I've ever played, Destiny 1. Then they've basically done everything with like Destiny Year 2 and Destiny Year 3 and Destiny 2 and upcoming Destiny 2 Year whatever, Destiny 2 Episode 1, whatever we'll call it. And obviously these games have flopped massively and have been panned massively. The company has exposed themselves every single year as being massively incompetent, because they look at Destiny Year 1 and then at the end of it they'll say, oh, we learned from our mistakes, we'll do better in Year 2. Then at the end of Year 2, oh, we learned from our mistakes, we'll do better in Year 3. The end of Year 3, oh, we learned from our mistakes, we'll do better in Destiny 2. And the cycle repeats, and it's going to keep repeating as long as Destiny's being made. In fact, as long as Activision, not just Activision, but as long as Bungie are under Bungie the way they are, essentially. Because it's clearly an inherent problem with the company, with the studio, rather than basically anything else. So, despite all of this, and despite, well, Bungie probably going to be flopping and flailing for the eternity of Destiny actually being developed, which I think is another 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years, if I remember correctly. I don't keep 100% up with it because, well, the game is an absolute joke. And here is where it gets very interesting. A Chinese gaming company called NetEase. Now, they're one of the biggest Chinese gaming companies out there, because I'm sure you all know that companies and how gaming works in China is very different to the rest of the world. So they are probably the biggest one over there, if not, they're one of the biggest, put it that way. And they've invested $100 million into Bungie, because they want Bungie games, Bungie developing their own games for the Chinese market, or possibly for the other market as well. It depends on how it's going to go and how they all do it there. But why are companies giving Bungie money? They clearly prove for, 5 years in a row now that they're massively incompetent and can't do anything. Let's go back. Let's go back a couple of years. And actually, before we go back a couple of years, I just want to reiterate this. If they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it keeps flailing and flopping and getting absolutely panned, and they say the same thing about how they learned from their mistakes, they're going to do better next time, and then they don't, and that is repeated every single year. The only people who are at fault here are the people who give them money after the very first time. In fact, I could argue that including the very first time, because, well, that's the issue we're going to get to now in a couple of seconds when we do the whole back to the past thing again. So, what am I talking about? Well, I'm guilty of this one at this point just one time, because there was the whole Destiny 1 incident where I did buy Destiny 1, but I knew it was being bad, but I bought it anyway. It's my own fault. I've taken the L on that one. Because, like I said, let's go back a couple of years. When did Destiny 1 come out? Was it 2014? I think it was 2014. I don't remember. It was so long ago for a game I don't give a shit about. But I played the beta of Destiny 1. Now, they had a closed alpha. I think it was a closed alpha. It might have been a closed beta. Right after E3 that year when Destiny was announced. Or revealed, or whatever it was. And then, a couple of weeks later, they had an open beta for everyone. I couldn't be bothered signing up because I didn't care enough. But when the open one came about, I downloaded that and I started playing it. And at that point, I've mentioned this multiple times in videos before, but at that point I realized that Destiny 1 was one of the worst first-person shooters I'd ever played, and it was possibly the most bare-bones game I'd ever played. And it blew my mind that not everyone else could see this, and I went on rants telling people in real life. Was I even making YouTube videos back then? I don't think I was, but I went on telling people, explaining in depth, real life friends and all, about how it was going to be awful and how it was the most bare bones and just basically terrible thing. But you know what? They were all committed to buying it. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to buy it and I'll play it witches anyway. About 2 weeks after the game launched, we were done. It was that simple, because the game, if you played Destiny 1, you know how it was. Then the first expansion came out, not the Year 2 thing, but the first actual Season Pass expansion came out, and that was also a joke. I mean, we finished it in like 2 hours and that was it. and that was pretty much it completely. And then, of course, the whole state of Destiny was actually so bad that Bungie had to completely scrap and rejig their idea for the second DLC just to somewhat fix the game. Imagine that. Imagine some DLC you paid for and that was basically talked about and promised that had to be completely scrapped just to fix the base games of the system they fucked up and essentially almost not give you any new content. Complete fuck up when it comes to that. Now again, I will say I held the L on that one. I bought the stupid expensive edition and of year one only. But when they came around the next year and they tried to sell me, what was it? Something Crota, I think it was. House of Crota maybe? No, that was House of Wolves. Something of Crota, I want to say. The first proper year 2 thing anyway. When they came around and they tried to sell that to me, I was having absolutely none of it. I gave up playing Destiny a long time ago at that point. My friends, of course, were all over it, but I was so, no, not today. I've learned my mistake the hard way. You motherfuckers should have learned your mistake the hard way. We have clear, living proof, evidence, and you have lived this and said this. And of course they clung to the whole thing as, oh, they said they learned from their mistakes and they're gonna fix it and be better. Here we are a couple of years later, and well, let's see. They bitched about the exact same thing for the first year. They bitched about the exact same thing for the first DLC, the first proper expansion. They bitched about it again for the second one, was it Rise of Iron? Maybe Fall of Iron? House of Iron? Whatever that one was. And then they bitched about it again for Destiny 2. And with the upcoming release of, or the upcoming announcement and release of the expansion, they're probably going to do the exact same thing. So that begs the question, why are people still giving Bungie money? Their game is a flop. Their game has been absolutely panned in every single capacity. The company is massively incompetent. Not only can they not do whatever they're trying to do, but let's remember when they brought in the Eververse. Remember Bungie had promised content updates and they'd promised content roadmaps and whatnot, and then Bungie actually actively came out and said in public that they could not keep up with this, but they wanted to make money. So they said, hey, let's put in Eververse. Remember that? Remember when Bungie sold you on this idea that they would give you all this content, and then they said, oh look, we can't do this, but we still want to milk you for money, and gave us Eververse. I say gave us Eververse, but I mean, it's not like I played fucking Destiny, but you know what I mean. They gave gamers, there we go, we'll call it that. So why are companies giving Bungie $100 million to make new studios and new talent, to make new self-developed IPs and games? It's clearly not working. Anyway, I eagerly await this whole thing to fall flat on its face and flop. Absolutely can't wait to see what they do, just because I want to laugh at it so damn much. So let me know in the comment section below anyway your opinion on what the shell of a company, the shadow of a company, the shadow of a shell of a shadow of a shell of a company that Bungie has become post Microsoft and post Halo. Were you tricked by Destiny? Did you love Destiny? Like myself, are you completely mind blown that people still give them money for absolute basic ass shit? Or are you one of the smart people who stopped playing Destiny when you realized, okay, this is trash? What do you think is going to be next? And do you think it's going to flop just as bad as Destiny? Let me know all that good stuff in the comments section below. Hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video. And while you're at it, why not even hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, just so you can get all the notifications for the updates, the live streams, whatever it is. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.